Next, the ongoing Jimmy Savile scandal, Jimmy Savile PSYOP, psychological operation, and institutional paedophilia. In previous shows, I have discussed the Savile case with Neil Sanders and Bill Maloney. They were both in agreement that Savile was probably protected from prosecution, but not from his status and work for charity as claimed in mainstream, but because he was probably an asset of the security services. But why? Why might Jimmy Savile have been working for MI5? Well, it's because security services use blackmail traps where they lure important politicians or other persons of influence to have sex with an underage person or child, then secretly film the act in order to get full control of that person.
It's because most people don't know and don't frankly want to know that this is a tactic of the intelligence agencies to use these children for sex in whatever purpose, either for fun or for blackmail.
Let's assume then that it does go right to the power at the top.
Paedophilia can control world politics. You're a politician, right?
Yeah, I understand.
I'm Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
I'll say, Rich, you want a kid?
Yeah.
Come over to Jersey. It's a pucker place. We've got some beautiful kids. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
Come up, it's going to cost you this, it's going to cost you that, it's going to cost you a little favour. You go, all right, Jim, that's great. Yeah. You go over there, but you don't know.
It's filmed without
it's filmed. You get home, DVD, or then would have been a VHS copy, comes in the post, so you see it, you're the politician, and then we say to you, we've got this on you, look at this film, and then you'll come back and say, what do you want?
And the intelligence agencies, because the CIA have been involved in this kind of activity, actually.
If you call someone a paedophile, and you can prove that they're a paedophile and they're a politician or whatever, you have then got them by the short and curlies.
Savile may well have been involved in the luring of people of influence and also in the providing of children. Perhaps you're still not convinced that MI5 would deliberately set up politicians with children to have sex and secretly film them. Well, Ken Livingstone, former Labour MP and former Mayor of London, would disagree with you. Here is a clip of Livingstone speaking in a radio interview, which was highlighted to me recently by Neil Sanders.
And I mean, I was raising in Parliament against Mrs Thatcher the Kincora Boys' Home, where boys were being abused, and MI5 was filming it because they were hoping to be able to blackmail senior politicians in Northern Ireland. They were hoping to catch one of Ian Paisley's MPs, and they never did, and give themselves some leverage. So the truth is there's been an awful lot of covering up of paedophiles and paedophile rings for decades and decades.
Mr Wallace, who's presently serving 10 years for manslaughter in an English jail, was known to have links with British intelligence.
Wallace claimed he was an intelligence officer. Wallace alleges he became involved in a black propaganda campaign by the security services.
There was no evidence to support the claims of Mr Colin Wallace.
Until anybody can produce proper evidence, there is no need to have an inquiry.
Politicians in Northern Ireland demanded a full inquiry.
In Lisburn, Colin Wallace is now a key figure in the Kincora investigation. Mr Wallace, who's presently serving 10 years for manslaughter in an English jail, was also known to have links with British intelligence.
The whole system, you see, is unaccountable and it's insidious. It's easy for the MI5 to just say, no, we don't do it, because nobody can prove whether they did or they don't.
Today, the role the military and intelligence services can play in manufacturing and manipulating the news is considered a conspiracy. Despite extensive press coverage of Colin Wallace's allegations, not a single person in a position of authority has been held to account.
Operation Fernbridge is looking at claims that senior political figures and others sexually abused boys at the nearby Elm Guesthouse in Barnes. Porrick O'Brien has this report.
We've not found enough evidence to prove that high-profile public figures abused boys here. There is this, though, a newsletter that connects Elm Guesthouse with the Conservative Party. It's from the Conservative Group for Homosexual Equality, a campaign group at the time which included some influential MPs. It was published 2 months before the raid. A section of it reads,
I am glad to publicise another establishment strongly recommended by members, Elm Guest House in Barnes, London. The facilities include a sauna, solarium and a video studio.
Rumours of big-name guests here went viral. An online conspiracy theory cottage industry was born, much of it spurious. But then, a few weeks ago, some of which had been just the preserve of conspiracy theorists, became a full, formal police investigation.
The investigation has revealed how conspiracy theorists are spreading falsehoods about UK terror attacks and tracking down survivors to their homes and workplaces to see if they are lying about their injuries. One survivor of the Manchester Arena bombing is preparing legal action against a man who says he spied on victims. The investigation was for BBC Panorama and a Radio 4 podcast by disinformation and social media correspondent Mariana Spring.
You know, you're profiting from the worst day of these people's lives. Do you realise that? Do you know, how does that make you feel?
Well, if you read my book, it's all the answers are in there.
But I have looked at your book, and in there are claims about the victims that are contrary to the evidence.
Richard Hall has since posted a new video saying he didn't put a camera outside the home of Eve Hibbert, but he admitted to leaving a camera rolling in his van parked in a public place. He says his door-to-door inquiries are polite and he can't be held responsible for people sending abuse online.
In 2019.
But for the survivors, they remain fearful of the conspiracies that he and others promote. Mariana Spring, BBC News.
Now, Prospero has the enchanting ability to create illusions and delusions. And in the pursuance of his art, he contrived a method of revenging himself upon Antonio. He caused a great tempest to arise, and as we go into the story further, we find that there was nothing wrong with the ship. Nothing happened. It was all in the minds. It was all in the experiences of those who were caught in the magic tempest. It is all a system of magic, a peculiar combination of illusion and delusion. It has also been suggested that Prospero is the new philosophy, that he is a personification of the intellectual reformation that resulted in the rise of modern scholarship. It has also been suggested, perhaps with equal integration, that he personifies the Hierophant of the ancient mystery system of Greece. He represents, therefore, a concept of what might be termed the philosopher king. He represents the leadership of the world by the best of itself, and that this best of itself shall finally come into authority. In this instance also, we have a little thought for Ariel. Now, Ariel is one of the interesting characters that appear in certain of the Shakespearean plays. Puck in The Midsummer Night's Dream is another. Ariel is a spirit. His name suggests air. But there is more to him than merely atmosphere. He is the messenger. He carries out the orders. He is subordinate to Prospero, but he flies about the world in the twinkling of an eye and almost travels as fast as modern television or these different international communication media.